It's the Hero Show. Welcome to the Hero Show, everybody. Starring the irrepressible Andrew Bernstein and the revitalized Robert Begley. I am Andrew Bernstein, and you are indubitably Robert Begley. How you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing great, Andy. I am revitalized and pumped up for today's show. About an hour ago, I went upstairs, 25th floor in my gym, and I was lifting weights because we are going to celebrate a man who, boy, he was a bigger than life in a major sense, but also has a Greek tragic element that we're going
Yeah,
to talk about today over the course of the episode.
right. And we are talking, of course, about the great bodybuilder Mike Mentzer, whose dates 1951 to 2001,
Yeah.
unfortunately, tragically died before his 50th birthday. So that is a
Hmm.
Greek tragedy, but accomplished an enormous amount in his field
Yes.
during his lifetime, and wrote books that was ostensibly on bodybuilding. I haven't read them, but I understand they're as much on a philosophy of life as they are about bodybuilding.
That's right, Heavy Duty series, Heavy Duty 1, and then the follow up to it. The second one had a lot more explicit philosophy. But if we go start at the beginning, Andy, 1951, he's born in a small town in Pennsylvania. Uh, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's like halfway between Philly and Harrisburg. And he's like 11, 12 years old, and he's 95. He's the proverbial 98-pound weakling, but he sees a muscle magazine and he just falls in love with the physique of bodybuilders.
Yeah,
His
which is
father
just
buys,
just let me
yeah,
jump in here for
go
a
ahead.
second, Robert, because I
Yeah,
remember as a kid I was reading all these superhero comics, and they always had these ads, Charles Atlas or Joe Weider, these bodybuilders, all they're all pumped up, and they always had these beautiful women hanging on them, hanging, they're like this showing their biceps, and some beautiful girls hanging on to his biceps, like some scene shot at Muscle Beach down in Venice,
yeah, yeah,
California. And his, yeah, they're talking about this. They're talking about the 99-pound, 98-pound weakling getting sand kicked in your face by bullies at the beach, and the girls they're not interested in you. They're interested in all these big huff and puff, He-Man kind of guys.
hmm,
And it was, for some 12-year-old kid who was reading superhero comics, it was very attractive.
yeah,
Regardless of the fact that not all the women in the world, are attracted to these big muscle guys, but that's a side issue. It's very attractive
yes.
to want to be all pumped up like that. So I didn't even know. So Mike Mensa didn't see it in the comic book when he saw it in a bodybuilding magazine or
Yeah, I think it was just like lying around, and he fell in love with the idea, and he starts. His father buys him some weights and an instruction book, and he reads it in the instructions. It basically says, "Do this maximum 3 times a week, not every day, 6 hours a day." And this would really impact him, his thinking, certainly down the road. He went through waves over the course of his life on the frequency issue. Dylan, if we could just show what he looked like early in life, we have three three pictures of him. First, he's a little bit more than 98 pounds here, but he's young to the left, pumping iron, and then you see him fully developed, and then he transitions to a man of ideas, and where he's explaining his theory on the right hand side. So that's a bit of the evolution
so that one in
of
the middle. That's the Mr. Universe,
yeah,
Mike Mensa.
yeah, yeah. That is that is absolutely. So he in school, though, he was never one of the things we love about Mentzer is that he was all ideas were always important to him, and in school he learned a love of literature and of writing, and he credits like his 12th grade teacher with giving him this real passion for reading and writing and beautiful literature. Could have been you, Randy. Could have been that you as a teacher, that kind of person who instills that in your
Oh, thank you.
students.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
But
and
but yeah, he went. in fact, he went to the University of Maryland and as a pre-med student, didn't he? And he
Yes,
studied. He said when the hours away from the gym, he was studying genetics and chemistry and everything.
that's
So
right.
we know he was a very
That's right.
smart guy.
In between those two, he went into the military for four
That's right. Yeah.
years, and in the military, he lifted every day. Pretty much like like the
Yeah, he
proverbial.
said. Well, I read like he was 6 days a week, three
Yeah,
hours a day of heavy
yeah,
duty lifting. I know Arthur Jones and Mike Mentzer later on developed very different approach to
that's
bodybuilding.
right.
But can you imagine heavy duty lifting 3 hours a day, 6 days a week? I mean, my God,
Yeah,
the wear and tear on your body is
yeah.
just enormous.
Well, again, it was that is pretty much the standard, or is largely known as a standard here. So then he gets
At that
out of the Air Force.
at that time, you mean?
That's right.
Yeah,
He gets
yeah,
out of the Air Force, and now we're into the 70s. He hurts his shoulder. He has a real serious injury in his shoulder, and it's right around that time, Andy, that he's studying in University of Maryland, and yeah, that's all he's doing. He's soaking up this knowledge, these ideas, what he would eventually call the science of exercise. His goal in life was to master the science of exercise, and bodybuilding was the most, I guess, ideal form of the physical body, and what he would consider like the especially like these heroic poses. And then I guess he healed up and left University of Maryland, and then started competing, started entering competitions,
yeah.
and
And he
he, go
And
ahead.
I was just going to say when he won with the perfect score, but you probably have material to
Yeah,
speak
he's
up to it,
he
right?
first he wins Mr. Lancaster with Lancaster County in Pennsylvania. So he
Yeah,
wins that. Then he
that's like being the tallest midget in Duluth, you know. That's a line from an old movie that I can't even remember the movie anymore. But that's what be Mr. Lancaster. I mean, the guy goes on to be Mr. Universe. I guess you got to start somewhere, right?
That's right.
You
That's
got
right.
to
Yeah,
start
yeah.
somewhere.
And actually, one thing, he had competed earlier and he came in like 10th place, but the winner was a student of Arthur Jones you had mentioned, and that was when he met Arthur Jones, the inventor of the Nautilus
Right,
equipment.
right.
And Jones was like his mentor, who changed his life, and that was the short, intense, infrequent exercises, going to maximum strength. So your last rep, you're ready. You're pretty much
Yeah,
ready to die. You've exerted
yeah.
100%
You just gotta
effort.
drop. You're just gonna drop at that point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so then he sees results, and yeah, so then he's Mr. America in 1975. He then Mr. North America. I'm sorry, 76, and then 77, Mr. North America, and then 78, Mr. Universe. And that's what you said with
Yeah.
that perfect score.
Yeah, and that was the first one. He was like Nadia Comaneci. I remember, I
Yeah,
think in the 1976 Olympics, I think it was in Montreal, where she had the perfect score, in
yeah,
gymnastics.
yeah.
That was the first time
Wow,
anybody recorded a perfect score in bodybuilding, wasn't it?
that's
300,
right.
300.
300 is a perfect score. Never been done before, and here you see him. The form and posing. He talks a lot about this. Your relationship. Your relationship with the audience. You want to kind of like feed off the audience while you're doing these different kinds of poses. But there's definitely some kind of Greek element,
Yeah, that's
between
what I was going to say. It
like
looks like a
his.
Greek god. You
Yes,
can see him in the movies if you want to be playing Hercules. Remember those old Steve Reeves film, Hercules Unchained,
that's right.
and
Yeah,
everything. Well, yeah, I mean, Steve Reeves must have been a bodybuilder. He was all bulked up. Well, I mean, Mike Mentzer is even beyond that, and
that's right.
he has that dark hair and everything. He could pass for Mentzer. Sounds like a German name, but he could pass for Greek. It looks like it.
Yeah,
So
he
yeah,
could definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
he
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 looks
fits
like a
right
Greek god.
in. And
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
the I'm sorry. That idea of the Greek is the mind is developed, the body is developed for the use of the mind. Like they're totally in sync with each other. And then we get to the 1980.
Let me jump in for a second here, Rob,
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
one of our heroes, one of the great heroes in American history that we did a hero show episode on a long time ago, Thomas Edison. Much as we love Edison and admire him, he had a very different view on this. He put on a lot of weight as he got older, and he said, how did he put it? He said my body is just a
It's
vehicle to carry around my mind or
my
something like
brain,
that.
my
You
brain.
know,
Yeah,
carry around my
yeah,
brain.
that's
Yeah,
all it
carry
is.
around my brain. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So he had a
yeah.
very different view. But yeah, as much as we admire Edison, we disagree with him on that. And Mike Mentzer is right.
Mhm.
If you want to
Yeah, and
take care of your brain and your mind, then you need to take care of the body.
that's right. That's right. And so at this time he's really famous. He had just turned professional and he's getting these offers from everybody, to pose and to enter all these contests. And then 1980, Mr. Universe comes down in Australia, and there's a lot of controversy to this day about this. And I'll just say from some of the data that I got, and I got to admit, I've done a lot of research on Mentzer. I haven't looked at the Arnold Schwarzenegger's part of it, but apparently, and Dylan, if you could show the picture next of the three of them in this contest. So Schwarzenegger entered like a few days before the contest, and it's basically because he knew the judges. So they were supposed to be, you have to qualify, you have to submit a long time in advance in order to win. In this picture, Arnold is the upper right, Mentzer is the upper left, and then Dorian Yates, who's a protege of Mentor later on. So they were in this, and Arnold wins, and Mentzer comes in not second, not third, but tied for fourth, and he knows something is up, and he's like disgusted with he because of his popularity, and he's he's getting fed up with the industry in many ways because they sell these muscle magazines. Why? For like supplements and equipment and all these things that, hey, if you take this one pill without effort, you'll look like me. That, and he's totally fed up with that. He knows it's hard work. He knows it's discipline. He knows there's a lot of uh, there's intelligence there. So he walks away. He
And,
leaves
he, and
the
to
industry.
the end of his life, he claimed that the 1980 Mr. Universe, it was Mr.
Yeah.
Universe, right? Competition was
Yes,
rigged.
Mr. Universe. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. In fact,
yeah,
remember Andy? Remember that show, The Superstars, on ABC?
yeah,
It was
yeah.
all
I
these
do.
athletes doing different
Yeah.
things. He was like part of that, and
I
I
remember. I
can't.
remember
I
poor
remember the
Joe
show.
Frazier. I remember poor Joe Frazier trying to swim, and I thought the only competition here was between Joe Frazier and a bowling ball to the bottom of the pool. But but I don't want to mock Smoke and Joe because he was a great fighter and he
No, he
was he
was.
was and
He,
he was a
he
good
he
guy.
totally was. But the point of that competition was that you did sports, you competed in sports that were not your specialty,
Right, right.
to see
They
how
shouldn't have let Joe Frazier near the deep end of the pool, though, Robert. That could have truncated his life
you're.
expectancy.
Yes,
Do you
yeah,
remember that
I
episode?
agree.
You remember
I
that one?
do.
Yeah,
I,
it was it
I
was
do.
it
I
was
watched that
sad.
it was on Saturdays on ABC. I'll never forget it.
Yeah,
And it was like,
yeah, right.
all Kyle Rote. Remember him? Kyle Rote
Yeah,
Jr.
yeah,
was the guy
yeah.
that.
Right,
So
that's right.
anyway, just coming back to this. So Mentzer's got this celebrity status, and Arnold was not. He had done Pumping Iron, but he wasn't the Arnold. He wasn't the Governator, like he or the
Yeah,
Terminator or any of those things. And we could see the trajectory because Arnold took off after that, and Mentzer went in a different direction. He went in a more cerebral direction, and he wanted to sell his. He was doing phone consultations and writing articles and all these other things. Um, while Arnold became the guy, and the difference between the two was Schwarzenegger was that 2 2 hour sets 6 days a week. training. Like that was kind of that was the point. What similar to what Mentzer did when he was in the Air Force, and the industry was kind of putting that out there that this is the way to get like this, and take these kind of supplements and one or two other things. So Mentzer retires, and he's going into the more cerebral route, but later on, he trains Dorian Yates, who wins like 6 times in a row. I think in the 1990s, he ended up winning, and it's in the mid 80s. I think that's when Mentzer discovered Rand. He read some of her novels when he was younger, but then he really became absorbed in the philosophy and wanted to base everything on the ideas of reason, independence, and effort, and all the basically the principles of objectivity in the science of exercise, and
Yeah,
whether
I
it's
can see the
nutrition.
I can see the philosophic framework here. A is
Yeah,
a muscle is that muscle. It is what it is, and it's going to respond
you're
best to
right.
certain type of exercise and not as well to other types of exercise. And then
Yeah,
it becomes part of the science of bodybuilding to find out just what type of exercise do these muscles respond to. And I think Arthur Jones, started it,
yeah,
the invented the Nautilus equipment, and this
yep.
these workouts where you work out maybe once every 4 or 5 days, or work once a week,
Hmm.
exercise to failure, like you said, Robert, and then you rest for 4 to 7 days. I think Arthur Jones, the inventor of the Nautilus equipment, was the one who developed that, right? And Mensa then
Yeah,
said, Arthur Jones isn't applying his own ideas, as consistently as he
yeah,
should, and took it even further. But yeah, the
right.
science of bodybuilding is fascinating because Mensa had studied pre-med at the University of Maryland, and
Yes.
he was studying genetics and chemistry,
Yeah.
and these subjects. You can see he's actually studying the way human muscles respond to different kinds of workouts, wasn't he? I mean, that's where his
That's
where
exactly right. And his point, Andy, was that the growth happens when you're resting. So you push the failure, and the growth ends up happening when you're actually resting. So I'll just do a little personal aside here. I trained with in the 1990s with I guess a disciple of Mentzer, and I was doing um, leg presses, and I got up to 1,000 pounds, Andy.
wow.
Okay, now
Oh,
this is when I'm ballet dancer, running New York City marathons. So
you
a
the
friend of
man,
mine
huh?
gives me a pass. A friend of mine
Competitive
gives me a
swimmer. You're a competitive swimmer also,
yeah, that
are
was
you?
a little bit later, but
Oh,
a
okay.
friend of mine gives me a pass to Gold's Gym in Manhattan, like West 53rd Street. So I go in, and because they had enough weights, I was in New York Health and Racket, and they didn't have 1,000 pounds. It was like I had to put someone on, I had to put them in weird places. So I'm loading this thing up. It takes a while. 45-pound weights. It takes a while to load up 1,000 pounds. And this big guy who looks like any one of these guys. He's training a woman, and he sees me doing that. And because I'm a guest, I don't know who he was. He comes over. He's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "I'm putting these on because I'm gonna lift it." He goes, "You can't do that." And I say, I'm like, "I can't, I'm not allowed to do it, or I'm incapable of doing it." He's like, "You'll never lift that." So I get on, Andy, and I'm pushing, okay, and I'm looking at him while I'm doing it, and then I finish, I take all the weights back, and I walk by very slowly. And he's like, got this,
Gotta
he's like,
breathe
"That,
me like a
yeah," he's like, "That wasn't lifting. You only went like this." And I said, "Look, you said I couldn't lift 1,000 pounds. I did. End of discussion. Goodbye." Okay. So then I go into New York Sports Club, and then I did it again, and I videotaped it. I actually have Carrie Ann videoing me, proving it's a lot of weight. But that was the
Oh yeah.
point. It was like you get to where you become so strong, more than you'd think you'd be capable of. And it was Mentzer's ideas, because I was reading his books, his heavy duty at that time, and
And
so
I like the way you swaggered past the dude who said you couldn't do it. Yeah, two thumbs up for that.
yeah. So let's talk, Dylan. Let's talk a little about his own philosophy. The image of him talking about the what the body is. what the human body is and the proper posture, because we know that Ayn Rand in her Philosophy Who Needs It, she talks about, the man's proper stature, his upright position, and here he is, he's got like a variation. A lot of his quotes are, you could really tell like that he's read Rand, because
Oh yeah. Oh,
some of the
absolutely.
same terminology there.
No, that's great. That's a great quote. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, you could tell. You're right. You could tell the intellectual inspiration here is Ayn Rand. No,
yeah,
nobody else in our day, and Mike Mentzer's
no,
day was thinking and writing in these terms. The
that's right. Yeah,
anti-hero,
so
anti-hero culture, and this
right.
is Ayn Rand's
Yeah,
philosophy of man. The hero stands out, dramatically.
let me just read it right here. Man's proper stature is not one of mediocrity, failure, frustration, or defeat, but one of achievement, strength, and nobility. In short, boy, it's
Man
hard to read
can
here.
and ought to be a hero.
Yeah, man can and ought to be a hero. So Andy, we're on the hero show. We're celebrating a man who actually sees the heroic, as you said, and
Hmm.
uh, I love this idea of applied objectivism. Okay, we talked about it
Yes.
a little bit beforehand, and it's rare. We don't have, there are not enough figures, and they might be in their own industry. Bodybuilding is not, there's a certain amount of people who are attracted to bodybuilding, and mostly they're not known for their intellect. They're known for, as they
Yeah.
said,
Well, the
on
stereotype. The
as they
stereotype
said on
is.
Charlie's Angels one time, Andy, they can lift a ton, but they can't spell it. And it's like
Well,
that's
that's
kind
the
of the stereo.
stereotype. Yeah, the
Yeah, that's the
stereotype of
stereo. And he
the
just
gym
shattered
rat,
that.
the jock,
That
is not very
yeah,
bright.
exactly. Yeah. So Mentzer shattered that, and
In
and
fairness,
brought
there's a lot of great athletes who are very smart, but the stereotype, that they're dumb
yes,
jocks that's
yes.
prevalent. That you're right. Mensa just took a sledgehammer to that, imagery and just shattered it into
Right.
pieces.
And but even athletes, Andy, if we talk about, I remember reading about Cal Ripken back in the 1990s, and that he had read Ayn Rand, and that kind of inspired
Yeah,
him. And there's athletes across all walks of life
yeah.
who have
Martina
read, and
Navratilova
there's
also, right? Martina Navratilova also said she
Billie
was.
Jean King. They'll
Yeah.
mention her, but when you actually adopt the philosophy and you say, you know what, across the board, this makes sense. This will help me in my life. And guess what? I'm a teacher now. I will show other people that bodybuilding is not just a physical thing, it's that blending of mind and body. And so this is one reason that Mentzer, his his stature grew in my mind, because he's, as we say, the science of exercise. He's got the mental side, and then he backs it up, and he backs it up with his clients as well. So now he's got up to thousands of clients, people he's doing phone consultations. He's got mailing lists, so he's an entrepreneur. Then he's
Yeah.
writing
Oh, yeah.
books. He's an author. So all these different things he's doing that are making him more famous, more impactful. And as I said, this idea of applying objectivism, we need more of that. We need more of these kinds of people. We mentioned Steve Ditko on Hero Show
Hmm.
with the comic industry, and Rush, early Rush, the band certainly got me influenced
Yeah.
by Ayn Rand.
Neil Peart was
Yeah,
an objectivist, wasn't
but
he?
there's just not
Drummer
that
of
many.
Rush.
There's not that many others who are like really, really famous. Now
Yeah.
there are dozens of businessmen. We applaud them, but who live by the ideas, and it helps them succeed in their business. But that's one reason I think Mentzer is
Yeah.
this
No, I
celebration
agree.
of
It's
him is perfect.
no, absolutely right, Rob. It's 65 years since the publication of Atlas Shrugged, and yeah, it's like the greatest plot structure ever written. I think you could. For me, and I think for you also, The Fountainhead's our personal favorite novel. But Atlas Shrugged, objectively,
Hmm.
given the nature of the literary genre, the nature of the novel, and the plot in Atlas Shrugged, and the way Ayn Rand integrated this theme into that plot, it's the
Yeah.
greatest novel ever written. And on top of it is it's this great novel gives you this handbook of irrational philosophy
Yeah.
and dramatized in action. And yet,
Hmm.
the growth of objectivism as a philosophy to me is very, very, very disconcertingly slow. I would
Yeah.
have thought as a kid that the philosophy would be much more widespread today, than it is. And yeah, you're right. Applied objectivism in all these different fields is very helpful. And I could say, I'll give you a couple of examples. It's like 1980. I'm still a kid in grad school, and I'm teaching like my first classes at CW
Hmm.
Post, the of Long Island University out on Long Island. And I'm using Ayn Rand in my ethics classes. I was using Anthem, and this kid comes up to me. I still remember his name. It's 40 something years later. The kid would be like 60 years old now. He was like 20 at the time. And we read an Anthem, and he said this tall, lean, blonde kid. He says to me, actually, it wasn't Dr. Bernstein. I was still in grad school, but he says to me, Professor, he said, I found out about Iron Man from 2112, from this great Rush album, and I've been reading Iron Man ever since. I said that's great, and probably a lot of other people also were introduced to Ayn
Yeah.
Rand by Rush, and then about late '90s or 2000, about 20 years later, I got contacted by this I won't mention his name, this bodybuilder in the UK who
Yeah.
was reading Mike Mentzer and was using Mike Mentzer's methods, and he said he got introduced to Ayn Rand that way, and he was reading Ayn Rand. He wanted to hire me, to tutor him in objectivism. So these guys are having an impact, and it's great. It's like you said, Robert. There's just so few of these innovators in their fields who are
Yeah.
using applied objectivism. I would have thought that the philosophy would have grown more widely and deeply by this time than it has. But we don't give up the fight, right? We still have freedom of speech, and we could still express our ideas and still try to change the world one mind at a time. And Mike Mentzer
That's right.
certainly contributed to that amongst his other accomplishment. His books. Let me ask you, his books are probably still widely read in the bodybuilding field,
Yeah.
aren't they?
In fact, there's one right here, high intensity training, that's co-authored with John Little. John is carrying the torch. I'll definitely give him some kudos here, because John he's got a YouTube channel where he shares so many videos of Mentzer talking about his ideas. And yeah, thank you, Dylan, for this picture of the two of them. And he sees the importance of philosophy, the importance of mind and body integration, and the legacy of Mentzer. He is really carrying it on. And the way he starts this book, my high intensity training, he says 36 hours after he signs the contract, Mentzer passes away. So we
Oh,
come to the Greek tragedy part. His genetics, he studied genetics, and although he was genetically fit with that incredible physique, his family had a history. They had different physiological issues, and there was no longevity. His mother died,
right.
and then his father died when he was not old, and yeah, 49 years old. And I remember 2001. I remember because it was a few weeks, few months before 9/11, actually, and then I hear that his brother dies, like the day, 2 days.
Yeah,
The
like two,
brothers
like a day
making
or two
funeral
later, right? Yeah. Yeah.
making funeral arrangements, and then he passes away. And the brother was on dialysis for some time before passing. And to Arnold Schwarzenegger's credit, as much they certainly butted heads, Mike Mentzer and Arnold, but Arnold contacted Ray Mentzer when he was down and dying, so to speak, and offered whatever I could do, and that made him rise,
Yeah.
in Mike Mentzer's estimation. And we credit Arnold, for something like that,
Oh,
that
yeah, sure.
like
Absolutely.
benevolence.
Yeah,
But two
absolutely.
brothers passing
That's like
away within,
that reminds me a little bit of wasn't there we did the hero show episode recently on the Fab Four, and if I remember
yeah,
correctly, there was a lot of friction between Paul McCartney and George Harrison, for a long time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when Harrison
Hmm.
was dying of cancer, I think McCartney let him stay in one of his
Yeah.
mansions out in
That's right.
California, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
same kind of goodwill there.
Right. So
But
this,
anyhow,
this legend passes away, and now it's, what do you do? What's the next step? Well, John Little completes this book. High intensity training comes out a couple of years later, and as I say, he's been carrying the torch there. And I just want to read one really good quote that Little has in the beginning of the opening of the book, High Intensity Training. He says, "To the new intellectuals, those who are willing to think for themselves and stand by their decisions, those who believe in principles and act on them, those who seek truth and are willing to share it, those who choose to learn and to educate, and who do so in a manner that is both benevolent and ethical. It is to their hands that the torch of Mike Mentzer's legacy is passed, and to them that this book is dedicated." So I like that. That's a nice touch here on a man whose impact, certainly in the bodybuilding world, is phenomenal, and across disciplines he's had an impact, and uh, thanks to people like John Little, his impact continues to this day.
no, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. John Little, a bodybuilder, also.
Yeah,
Or no?
he's
Yeah.
written books. He's written Body
Uh,
by Science. He co-wrote,
some of these guys have
and
the name
yeah.
just Little John Little, Little John. He's just this big dude. Should be more like remember that guy used to play defensive line for the New York Jets, Verlin Biggs. That is a name for right. That's a name for a bodybuilder, an NFL lineman.
Yeah.
Verlin Biggs. He was on. He
Some
was on
names
that show.
fit.
Yeah, yeah, he
Yeah.
was on that Joe Namath team that won the Super Bowl. But be that as it may, I just want to say something about genetics here. If you
Yeah.
remember Jim Fixx, one of the guys who spearheaded the
For,
jogging revolution going
yes.
back, 50
Yeah.
years or more. I think he was in his late 40s. Is this tremendous
FIXX.
cardiovascular,
Hmm.
he could run miles. He was lean and fit, and then tremendous condition. And I think he was in his late 40s. He has a massive heart attack and he dies. And I
Yeah.
was like, whoa. So I asked my
Yeah.
family doctor, I'll mention his name because he was a great guy, Leonard Finkelstein. Isn't that a great name for a doctor? I mean, that's like perfect. Jewish,
There's
stereotypical
probably
Jewish doctor.
18 Leonard Finkelstein doctors, by the way, right?
Yeah, yeah, in the New York area, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe more than 18. Just 18 in Brooklyn. But anyhow, I
Yeah.
asked how is that possible? And I remember, Dr. Finkelstein saying, sadly, he said you cannot entirely escape your genes.
Yeah.
And so you could control all the controllable factors, and because
Yeah.
we can't escape our genes, we should control all the controllable factors. And
Yeah.
Mike Mentzer did that brilliantly. But your genetic code is what it is, and it's
That's right.
like Dr. Finkelstein said, you're not gonna escape. I mean, maybe with the advances in biology and life increasing life expectancy and gene splicing or stem cell research or whatever,
Yes.
maybe we could change that. But today, I think we could say you cannot. And
Yeah.
what is one? Oh, well, one other thing I wanted to
Just
mention.
like Andy, I'm sorry if just
Yeah,
hold
go
your
ahead.
thought. Just like
Yeah,
ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, there's still
yeah,
no cure. Decades after he passed away. And
yeah.
so
80 years ago.
hopefully science will catch up. And this is where free market science, frankly, would be the solution, because if you give the profit motive, people will,
Yeah.
medicines and the industry will come up with answers. But
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, we're just not there yet where we want to be, but there's some good work being done
Mhm.
in the science of exercise and longevity and nutrition and fitness.
Yeah, I know you're absolutely right. And this morning, in preparation for the show, so I was watching, on YouTube an interview with Mike Mentzer. Goes back 30
Mhm.
years ago. I think it was the early 90s. And early 90s, talk about, and the interview asked him about steroid use. And it reminded me, the early 90s, that's when Lyle Alzado, if you remember, the
That's
great
right, Denver
NFL
Broncos.
player. Yeah, yeah, and Oakland Raiders. Uh, he's an NFL Hall of Famer, and
Yeah,
he had been a skinny kid growing up, and he really bulked up to play football and used a lot of steroids. And when he was dying of I think it was brain cancer, I think Lyle Alzado was dying of,
Hmm.
he did this tour. He claimed that the steroid use had contributed to it. Now, I don't know what the medicine or the science says if steroid use contributes to brain cancer or not.
Right.
I
Me
don't know, but
neither.
yeah, but he was convinced of it, and he did this tour, around the country to warn athletes and everybody else about steroid use. So this was around the same time that Mike Mentzer, that did that interview I was watching, and
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any relationship between heavy steroid use and brain cancer or not, but we know that heavy steroid use is harmful in various ways. And when they asked him, you know, if you want to compete at that level, is it
Hmm.
necessary to use steroids? And Mike Benson very honestly said, yes, there's no way to bulk up
Right.
to the way that we are at, when we're talking about
Yeah.
Mr. Universe and stuff. Without you
Hmm.
just there's a lot of effort involved, but there's no way to do it without steroid use. So I don't know if that's
Hmm.
true or not. I'm assuming let's assume that it is. Mike Menzies is a very rational guy, you know,
Yeah.
then in effect saying to bodybuilders and prospective bodybuilders, if you want to get to that level, there's no way to do it without these drugs, but these drugs are harmful to your body, and you got to make a
There's a
choice. You got
side
to make a
effect. Yeah.
yeah, you got to make a rational choice here. Is it mean
Hmm.
that much to you that you're willing to maybe take years, you know, and maybe
Hmm.
maybe a large number of years off your life in order to win Mr. Universe? For some people
Yeah.
it is. Not me, but
Yeah.
for some
Yeah,
people,
Andy,
they
we could tie it into the Greek, another Greek tragedy, the story of Achilles, who chooses to
that's right.
die in battle, a young, vibrant life, choosing to die in battle instead of old age and without any, recognition. And
That's
that's
right. He wanted
out
the
there.
glory.
That idea is
That's
out
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right. That's a good comparison, Robert, because I think Achilles dies at age 26. Well, he's in his 20s anyhow.
there.
And
Yeah.
and the alternative was stay at home, live a long life, get married, have romantic love, have a family. All your family will love you, and you'll have this rich life. But when you die, you'll be forgotten. Or go to a
Hmm.
war, do all these glorious things, get killed in battle at a very young age, and become immortal. Be remembered forever. And immortality, that kind of immortality, that kind of glory mattered more to Achilles. This is fiction, of course, but than a long life filled with love. For
Yeah.
some people, the glory is that important. That's okay. That's a rational choice they make. Is they're not evading the facts if they if
Right.
they know if they know what the facts
Hmm.
are, and that's going to probably lead to years off their life and an early death, and they make that choice because
Hmm.
winning the Super Bowl or winning the Olympic gold medal or winning Mr.
Yeah.
Universe means more to them. Well, it's a rational choice they make at
Hmm.
that point.
Yeah, on that note, I would say Mark Sisson, one of my fitness gurus, I adopt his his motto is live long, drop dead.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
I like
so in
the
other words, don't
uh,
have this
uh,
long drawn out in the hospital for the last 15 years of your life on respirators. No, no, no. Just live long to the fullest. So not the short life of Achilles, a long,
yes, I
you know,
agree. I agree.
and then
But
just
I
drop dead
love
when the time is right.
right. No, I remember, and we should do a hero show episode at some point on Gene Roddenberry because the old Star Trek, the
Yes.
original Star Trek show was brilliant, and you
Yeah.
you remember the Vulcan salutation, right? May you live
Live long
long
and
and
prosper,
prosper.
right?
Yeah, I love
Yes.
it. It's
Uh-huh.
very Aristotelian. It's very
Yes.
objectivist. May you live long and prosper, and
Yeah.
and I love it. So I'm gonna avoid all those drugs, and everything.
Hmm.
But that's a personal choice somebody makes. It's like these guys who do this free solo climbing. You
Yeah.
remember that guy? What's his name? Alex Honnold, who free soloed El Capitan in Yosemite. I saw the movie. I don't know if you saw the movie. I mean, it's
Is that the James
extraordinary.
Franco when he? Is that the Franco one where he has to chop off his arm?
No, no, no. This is
Okay.
this is about a rock climber. True story. And
Okay.
it's not a dramatization. They actually filmed him climbing El Capitan. I think I forget the elevation, but it's
Okay.
high.
Hmm.
I don't remember
Yeah.
if it's 1,000 feet or 3,000 feet. I don't remember. It's certainly high enough for one slip and you plunge to your death. And
Right.
he did it without any ropes, and he even his
Yeah.
girlfriend couldn't even stay and watch. She left.
Hmm.
I couldn't blame her. And for somebody like that, I don't recommend it. But don't try this at home, as they
No.
as they used to say, but
No.
or anywhere else for that matter. But he did this very rationally. First of all, he said anybody who makes free soloing a large part of their climbing has a very short life expectancy because one
Yeah.
slip is all it takes and you die.
Right.
But he
Hmm.
climbed El Capitan any number of times with the ropes, and he choreographed every step. He wrote it down. It's like when you get to
Mm.
this crevice, your left hand
Hmm.
goes here, your
Hmm.
foot here. He had a whole notebook filled, and he had it like remembered. He had it memorized. He had a
Wow.
whole thing. He had a whole thing choreographed. So he did it very rationally, but still, this is enormously dangerous. So it's like somebody he did it. I respect the rationality. He accepted the risks and the challenges. This is
Yeah.
let's put it this way. This has to mean so much to you that
Yes.
it's worth that life without these activities is
Yeah.
just this is my love, this is my passion, this is my highest value,
Yep.
and then I take the risk. And similarly with the steroids and the bodybuilding, this has to mean
Yeah.
so much to me that I want to be the
Hmm.
best
Hmm.
muscular guy that I could possibly be, and maybe win Mr. Universe. That I'm willing to risk my life and maybe take years off my life. So it's a value choice that people make. I would just say do it rationally, the way Mike Mentzer did, or Alex Honnold, the rock climber, does it. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And then I would say to them, secondly, well, if you're that rational, how about just don't do it? Yeah,
Right.
but but but
But also, Andy,
this
the
has
the
meaning. Meaning in your life comes from something, and
meaning in
for
your
these
life,
guys,
and also the fact that here we are 21 years later, celebrating what he did while he was alive shows the legacy continues. And the fact that there are other people, John Little, etc., who are following the ideas and the principles of him. In that sense, like, he hasn't died, he's not out of the public mind. He still can inspire. And this is where, like, even an Achilles, his story can certainly inspire people. You don't want that
yes.
rage, but you want that passion, maybe, in going into battle.
Yeah,
So
this is not the choices I would make, but it's not my call. It's their life,
yes, that's
and
right. And
the
volition is a
meaning.
big part. He
Yeah,
understands that. That's right. Choice is a big part in every step of the way in a person's life.
right. And
Mhm.
life without meaning is meaningless by definition.
Yes.
And this is what
Yes.
gives meaning, to Mike Mensa and other great
Hmm.
bodybuilders. And if steroids have to be part of it to get to that level, then they so be it. But it possibly contributed to the tragedy of Mike Mensa's life. The short life expectancy, certainly his genetic inheritance is
Yeah.
is is a major factor here. But yeah, you're right. Mike Mensa is immortal. His achievements and legacy goes on. His books are still
Hmm.
widely read and studied, and so he's an immortal in the field of bodybuilding. And
Yeah.
I think we could salute him, Robert. Any last points you want to make
No,
about
just
Mike?
and he understands heroism the way we do here on this show.
Yes.
So for that,
Oh,
yeah,
well, yeah.
definitely.
That reminds me. One last point. At some point near the end of his life, obviously, I couldn't have known it was near the end of his life. But he contacted. I never met him.
I
He
remember
contacted
that. I remember that,
you.
Andy. I actually do. You and I spoke about that because I knew about him. Go ahead. Yes, I should remind you to say this earlier.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
because I had given a talk on heroism, and I think it was published somewhere. This goes back to the late '90s. I can't remember. He contacted
Hmm.
me. I don't think I even had an email account. That I don't remember. I don't remember. It might have been a snail mail letter. I don't even remember. But he
Okay.
wanted permission to use my heroism talk, which had been published somewhere. Now let me ask you this: late '90s. I kind of vaguely remember that he wanted to put it on his website. But did people even
He
have
had a
websites in the
website.
late 90s? In the late
Yeah,
90s, did they have
yeah, he
websites?
did. MikeMentzer.com. He had a website, and that was how I knew about him. And he had different articles, and many of them were actually written by objectivists. You know, like that was kind of one section of his website, and I remember that vividly. And I remember talking to you about that because I was like, Andy, this guy's he gets heroism the way you and I do. Like this is since we've known each other how many decades, we
Yeah,
know what heroism, the value of it in making a life, worth living.
right.
And here's another guy who's like a giant in his industry, and he's reaching out to you, and I was like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. So I obviously I gave him permission. So I guess he put it up on his website. But that's my my brief contact with Mike Mensa,
Yeah.
and it's
Hmm.
appropriate that that it should swirl around the topic of heroism. Here's the
Yes.
book,
That's right.
you know, heroes. Here, can you see it? I can never remember
Yeah,
which way
heroes,
to.
legends, and champions. Yep, and
Yeah, it's
Mentzer
too bad.
definitely deserves a. Yep,
Yes, this is many
absolutely.
years after Mike Mentzer died, unfortunately, because I certainly would have sent him a personal signed copy of it, but he because it's to a significant degree it's based on that talk and essay that
Hmm.
Mike had admired and put up on his website, but
Yeah.
uh, was not to be. Well, again, let's salute Mike Mentzer, the
Yes. Let's do
immortal
it properly. Yeah. Hmm.
in the field of bodybuilding. Say thank you, Mike Mentzer, and I want to wish everybody out there in Hero Land to all of us strive to lead heroic lives, and as part of the heroic
Yes.
lives we strive to lead, to try and introduce Ayn Rand's books of philosophy and to people in our own milieu,
Yes.
and people the people that we know in one capacity or another, and today with
Hmm.
the internet and social media, we can reach a broader range. So, let's have a voice for reason, individual rights,
Right.
political, economic liberty, and heroism, like Mike Mentzer. So
Yeah.
everybody have a great and more heroic day, and we'll be back next week with more
Next week.
discussions of these great men and women on the Hero Show. We'll see you then, everybody.